here, I have Fabak here. I just want to gauge the mood in terms of their own assessment of the first 10 months of the John Dramani Mahama administration. Really, has the economy turned the corner, as we are made to believe? So let me come to you, Charles.
Yes, good afternoon once again, and thanks for the opportunity. One word to describe the economy, I would call it fantastic experience 2025. I say so, looking at where we are coming from as businesses, and you've shown the numbers. They were scary. There was so much uncertainties. We saw our capitals dwindling every moment. Cost of borrowing was going high. We almost threw our hands in despair. Here comes a government that says you want to reset the economy, and you decide to be prudent in terms of its fiscal expenditure. It consolidates a lot of expenditure to ensure that at least we reduce crowding out effects and make borrowing much more attractive now. So when you look at the TB rate, it's so down. The banks have no other option than to give their monies to the businesses. So today we are lending or borrowing from the bank in the average between 24–25%, depending on your risk level. Previously it was about 30–35%. So there's some savings for businesses. And when you also want to touch on the forex performance as against local currency, previously, forex was the store of value for every transaction because it's good for us. But today, yesterday I was having a conversation with someone and he said, don't mention dollar here, I want it in cedis. That's indication of the confidence that people now have on a local currency, that the cedi has become a store of value. And that, of course, has outperformed major trading currencies like the dollar, the pound, the euro. You mentioned a figure of 30%. It goes beyond that. It's doing about 37% outperform that of the foreign currencies. That is savings to us businesses because we lose our working capital to forex highs. And any moment forex go high, we need to have debt financing to show up the losses. So if there's a gain of 37%, that's a reference of our investment. That means I don't need to go and borrow again. I'm saving almost about 37%. If I have to borrow at that time at 35%, add it to the 37%, I'm almost in the range of 70% lost in terms of cost of borrowing and doing businesses. And that, of course, had brought that kind of respite to businesses. And it has affected key indicators like the policy rate. It has also affected that is of inflation. Inflation has come down to the single digit. That, of course, means that the rate at which price would have increased has slowed down by 8% or so. That, of course, gives the ordinary consumer that disposable income. That gives that consumer that hope that prices will not be increasing that fast. So I don't need to rush to buy items. So I can divert my money to other investment that could probably secure my future. And to us as businesses, there's so much confidence we have now. Ghana, of course, have been earmarked as net import country. But today I can tell you there's a reverse of it. Because we've done export values in the tune of about 17 billion or so, against import of about 11 billion. So in terms of international transaction, we have export excess of about 6 billion. That is a good news. When you look at gross international reserve, that gives any investor an idea about a capacity to meet any external payment, to handle any shocks. We're doing the range of $12 billion. If you're a businessman, you see this figure, that confidence level is different from any feeling. So we are very grateful to the government, especially when it was a time for them to intervene in terms of the forest. We heard a lot of people complaining, it's not good for the country, it's not healthy, it's not sustainable. And I asked one question, if you have done business, if you lost your capital to forest heights, you might probably will keep quiet for a moment for us to enjoy, because we know how it feels. to lose capital. And I can tell you, 2022, most people lost everything. Everything. And that is why banks, you were recording high non-performing loans. The reason is, if I'm going for a facility from a bank, they benchmark.
You know what, Charles? This is by way of preliminary remarks on your assessment. But I just want to give you your other
I'm giving you the respite, the importance of that.
It's a big one, so you really want to unpack that.
Just a minute, I'll be done with it. Okay, you're making me lose thoughts.
I'm sorry.
So when I'm going for a loan from the bank, my first security is my cash flows, and cash flows is based on business activities and the capital that they are injecting. So if I lose part of this capital through forest hikes, it means my cash flows will be impaired. And I'm not able to meet the bank loans in terms of repayment. And that's why they were recording non-performing loans. But you could see there's a reverse. There's been some improvement. And that is because our city has been able to outperform forest, and business are saving their capitals.
Yeah, indeed, and if you talk about the non-performing loans coming down from some 24% to now 18% per the Bank of Ghana data. But thank you so much by way of your introduction, Charles. Let me now come to my friend here from FABAC. We know that before the presentation of the budget, they issued a particular statement outlining about 7 key areas that they wanted the finance minister to capture in the budget. But I know that when the budget is being read, or before it's being read, there is this form of engagement between, trading associations, industry players, and what have you. This time around, were you invited? What kind of conversations happened in that particular, engagement?
Thank you very much, and then good afternoon to your viewers and listeners. I would say that, it has been a tradition that each time we are invited over the years, and indeed what I presented is some of those points that we made available to them, that we expect this particular budget to capture some of them, if not all. So we were invited.
I see. But in there, did you make any input, or even let me ask you about your assessment of the first 10 months of the John Dramani Mahama government? Have businesses felt the relief and respite brought on by the sound macroeconomic indicators?
Well, let me say, generally, looking at where we come from, there's a bit of a stability. And in terms of economics, they've stabilized the key macroeconomic indicators. They brought down the temperature of the macroeconomic indicators. As my brother indicated, the inflation and all those kind of stuff have come down. But just that at a point somewhere, somewhere there was a slide. And normally when there's a slide like that, it creates a bit of panic in the business environment, because the Ghana market is a supply market. So when you give your goods out on credit at a certain exchange rate and there is a big drop, you can't go back to the market and say, I have changed. So there was some bit of loss there. But generally the government has stabilized the economy and things looks quite good. Just that the government is not spending. So demand is very low. And I made a statement to that effect. And the governor of the Bank of Ghana also came and confirmed that demand has dropped almost like 70% in the market. People are not buying. And only 2 days ago, even local rice farmers, local maize and all that, they had demonstration in Tamale that their goods are not being bought and all that. So this indicated, these are numbers, fundamentals, very good, beautiful so far, and we hope that we continue in that trend, but there have to be an activity in the country.
So from what you see, what I get to understand is that after that stability, businesses or the private sector must be empowered so that we can feel the real impact of the stability on the ground.
There have to be, and that's what I expect in this particular budget, if we get to that. There has to be a certain level of stimulation of demand, because people are not buying, and we are deep in there. You go out and generally, whether it is food products, hardware and all that, and I do a lot of research and talk to people are not buying. And so because of this particular low level of demand, you find out that smuggling has increased, because people are finding different ways to be able to sell below the fair market price so that they can be able to make up some money. And that's a challenge. So the fundamentals look very beautiful and all that, but we need to get people to begin to buy so that businesses can begin to take it to the next level. Otherwise, as it is now, there's a complete squeeze. There's no money in the system. Everybody say no money in the system. As we can see, the government is continue withdrawing money from the system through the treasury bill rates and then all that and auction and all that. So we need to do a lot in this particular coming budget to stimulate demand, to create more economic activity. And that is when we can begin to take it to the next level.
Very well. Let me come to Francis Timoboy, and from where you sit as a tax consultant, if you look at the picture in terms of, revenue expenditure, John is making a point that the government is not spending, something that the government says is not true. They are saying that, contractors are saying that they have not been paid, but government says it is spending. It has made some allocation to some of its, budgetary projects and policies. So if I'm asking you about revenue expenditure, do you feel some form of fiscal restraints or a compression of capital spending, for which reason we are not able to see the effect of the stability in the economy on the individual or even business level?
So to be honest, I think that the team have done well, because before the changeover, you could feel some heat in the system. And they have demonstrated to Ghanaians that they can deliver results. We've seen a number of indicators going down. Inflation is fantastic today. The exchange rate has been very, very stable. In the midst of them scrapping a number of tax handles, you can only be disciplined, because immediately they came, betting tax went away, e-levy went away, and even at the port, custom duties was underperforming because of the appreciation of the cedi. By mid-year, we were down by 1.6 billion. And so if your revenue is not coming, the only disciplined approach will be that you are always careful with your expenditure. And it's not easy for a government to do that, because there's always pressure. We've seen the Nurses Association pushing very hard. And if you are the Minister for Labor, you always cannot sleep because there's pressure. And so for me, the fact that they've been able to contain the pressure and they are not spending according to how much they are getting, and that's what we normally miss. Sometimes we don't have the revenue, but we say, okay, there's pressure, so let's spend. And then we get out of hands. So I think that they've learned their lessons. Lessons has played a very key role. This is a returning government. So they've learned their lessons. IMF may also have whipped them into, line. So overall, I will give them kudos. And again, it sets a very complex platform for this minister going into 2026, because we've seen you doing well. Can you sustain that in 2026, especially when the coach goes away, the IMF, and when they pack their bags and go? Will you continue to be disciplined? We all know that revenue, and for that matter, tax revenue in Ghana is a problem. And in addition, our oil revenue is also not looking promising. I think PIAC has released a report that we have a problem, no new investment. So that tells you that projects like the free SHS, which largely depends on the oil revenue, they are all at stake. So you consider all these things and then you put yourself together and say, okay, look, money is not coming. What do I do? Do I keep on borrowing and still go back to the debt to GDP ratio high? The only thing they can do is to contain themselves. And I think that is why I really salute them for that. Let's see how they maintain that going into 2026.
All right, thank you so much, Francis Timoboy. You are talking more about fiscal discipline going into 2026. We will be getting into the details pretty shortly. But from the civil society side of things, Jennifer Moffat is here from Budget Ghana. I'm sure even before the presentation of this budget, you've been doing some work in the background. Really, what's the sense on the grounds when it comes to, the kinds of, you know, people that you have been engaging when it comes to some of the works you do in terms of pre-budget, you know, a service?
Thank you so much, Nee. When 2025 budget was read, we were here, and I made mention that the 2025 budget was more like a Panadol relief budget because it brought us a lot of relief. And like most of the able gentlemen in this room have said today, we saw a lot of relief coming in, and so people were much, much more expectant. Aside the budget being read, mid-year we saw a lot of improvements in the economy, and everyone was happy. I think when the budget was read, my people in the office, we were shouting because aside the fact that we are Ghanaians, we are also youth, and we saw that most of the projections that government wanted to do would also benefit us. So we were very excited about it. Moving on, we've seen like Gov't, Mr. Charles said, Fabag, inflation come back to 8%, as you also mentioned in your submission. And it's exciting seeing all these indicators, see this stabilizing. Everything is looking so good on paper. But the truth is it translating to people's pockets? Is it translating to our everyday life? And that is what we are not seeing. So Mr. John made mention that people are not even purchasing. It's because, yes, we are looking so good on paper, we are doing so well, inflation 8%, but the ordinary Ghanaian, when you tell the person inflation is at 8%, has anything changed in the economy right now? And that's not something that we are really seeing. So we are hoping that 2026 is going to, budget would now, all this good work that is good on paper that we are seeing, we'll now see it in the economy, like real projections, real activity, real movement, and not just that we come and say everything is looking good online, and when we go into the economy, we go into the market, we go into the schools, we go into places, we will not see, we are not feeling it. Moving that even also links to even the unemployment rate, which unemployment in total is around 13%, but youth unemployment is much, much higher at 32%. Is this what is impacting the so-called Galamsey? Is this what is impacting what happened just yesterday when we heard some news, which is over 60,000 people applying, 30,000 qualifying, and you were only looking for 4,000? This is very alarming because these are youth, and it's telling us that something is really wrong for 60,000 people to apply for a job that is only for 4,000 people. We need to, as a country, stop and really rethink some of these things. So if we are saying, and that's why 2026, I have so much expectation, very high expectation for government, because not only do we want to see all the good work on paper, as civil society, as a young person who is also in Ghana, I want to see real change in the economy where we can really see that we are moving things and not just the main talks as we usually we are doing. And I like it when Mr. Charles mentioned all the beautiful things. I'm like, yeah, this is very, very beautiful, but what is it?
How? Taking it away from what some of the benefit this has been.
Oh yes,
Mr.
we agree.
Mr. Awinyo is here. Price was selling.
No, prices have dropped.
Have dropped.
Yes,
So that was some of the benefits.
We see that. We appreciate it. But then the people are also not purchasing because the money is not there.
So we'll be getting into why that particular situation, and even why, despite all the good things that we've seen on paper in terms of the macroeconomic, indicators, the impact has never been felt. Is it that the 2026 budget is the one going to be the turning point?
Yes.
Because this is, someone will say, the prelims of, the government. But thank you so much, Jennifer, for your insights in terms of the assessment of the government. But let me come to Nelson. Nelson, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon again. Where you sit as a tax person, a finance person, government has rolled out a number of policies. The economic indicators we've all alluded to is, something that have turned to the right direction. Most of them have been outperformed. And so really, if you are to give your sense and paint a picture of how far the government has come, having won the 2024 elections, spent some 10 months in office, introduced some policies, what would you say is the government, trump card?
All right, thank you very much. The main challenge that we have had in this country in the past has to do with leadership. We have not gotten the kind of leadership that can transform the fundamentals of this economy. And I was mentioning on another platform that one of the factors that are actually contributing to the gains that we are seeing today is about the tone at the top right from the beginning and the kind of appointment that the president made. You cannot take that away. You cannot disassociate the appointment from the gains that we have seen today. If you look at the ministers that the president appointed, these are people who are well versed in the various sectors that they were assigned to. Before the election, I met the Honorable Finance Minister, and I mean, from the way he spoke, you get to realize that he's really up to the task. He understands the fundamentals of the economy, having been a deputy finance minister before, having served as a ranking member of the finance committee. And so in terms of the economy, he knows where the issues are. If you look at the other ministries too, you realize that they are all doing very well. Now, yes, we all agree on this platform that the economy has seen some level of stability. But I think there are some still risk factors that are still inherent there. One of the reasons why we have enjoyed this relative stability of the cedi has to do with the reserve that we have built. Now, the question is the reserve from which source? Okay, you are building a reserve from commodity exports. And those commodity exports, we don't have control over the prices. And so today, when prices of gold goes down, it means that technically we are going to get a problem. Now, at the beginning of the year, an ounce of gold was at $2,600. Today, it's around $4,100 and something, which is good. Now, we also export crude. Crude is around $74 per barrel. But today, crude is now around $64 per barrel. There is a sharp reduction over there. You also take cocoa, the backbone of our economy. Cocoa was around $11,500, but currently it has dropped sharply to $6,000. So clearly, it means that when we continue building our reserve on this commodity export, and there is some volatilities in there, we are going to have a serious challenge. And so the reason why my expectation is that going forward, we should focus more on value-added products that we can export, and that is sustainable. We should bring on board more import substitution industries. In fact, we spend almost $400 million every year importing chicken. I was even surprised, $400 million importing chicken into Ghana. So I think that these are some of the areas that government has to concentrate on, most especially the implementation of the 24-hour economy policy, which is intended to capacitate the private sector. Once we are able to shift from this colonial economic model of commodity exportation to a more value-added, export, then we can build a reserve that is sustainable. We can build a reserve that is original, that can help support the cedi. However, the performance of the indicators, as you rightly mentioned, is not attributable to only the finance ministry alone. The central bank also plays a major role. Now, I always have problem with people who say, why is the central bank intervening in the market, injecting FX into the market? The kind of exchange rate system we have in Ghana is the managed floating exchange rate system, which means that we allow the market to determine the rate, but as and when it is needed, the central bank must intervene. Now, he as a business person and he as a business person, they are only interested in the stability of the exchange rate, because that is what leads to predictability. And so whether Bank of Ghana is intervening on weekly basis or intervening on daily basis, to the extent that their intervention is yielding the right result, I'm sure they will be happy. So I think the stability that we have enjoyed in terms of currency stability, in terms of price stability, the chunk of the praise must be given to the central bank because they have done exceptionally well.
Very well, Nelson. And so the point you make really is that although the improvement we've seen is as a result of the accumulation of reserve due to the fact that we have gold and crude oil exports, any shakeup in the global commodity pricing will also have an effect on our economy, and so the economy will be more susceptible to some of these things. Again, you mentioned the Bank of Ghana's intervention. Just earlier this week, we heard the Bank of Ghana approving a new forex framework to aid the operations. Talk of transparency, talk of intermediation. We'll be talking about how all of these will help us get a stable framework. But I just want to go on to Zoom now and then speak to Professor Patrick Esuming to also pick his thoughts about the first, 10 months of the John Dramani Mahama administration. Prof, if you can hear me, let's get your assessment of how far the government has come. Okay, good afternoon, and I've been enjoying the discussion going on in the studio. I think that, I agree with Nelson in terms of, first, the performance has been very, very good. This year has gone extremely well for the Ghanaian economy. If you look at where we started the year from, also doom and gloom, and things were looking very bleak. But, I agree with Nelson that it's a combination of factors that have gone in our favor, as well as some shrewd policy making that has brought the results that we've seen. If you start with the fiscal side, you realize that coming toward the end of last year, even though we are in an IMF program, we still managed to mess up our finances, right? And by the end of the previous review, we saw that we've missed a number of our targets. So I think the new administration coming in, I think it was very good choices, especially with the finance ministry, deciding that first they were going to shift the focus of the consolidation from excessive reliance on revenue through new tax handles, and then focus a little bit more attention on restraining government expenditure. So I think that has been extremely helpful because you needed to show to the IMF that you are committed to the consolidation. And at the same time, you also needed to bring the program back on stream so that you calm people or the investors who are a little bit concerned about where how we ended the year. So I think that was really good, and you saw that the confidence immediately started spiking up, both consumer and business confidence, and I think that helped. So we got to a great start. Then, but on the fiscal side, I think looking into the 2026, in some sense, the 2025 budget is unique and it's going to be very difficult to replicate. How so? In the sense that if you look at how much expenditure restraint we've implemented, it's the kind of thing that you can only do in the first year of administration where you have a lot of goodwill and people are generally very give you a lot of leeway, and you can use the first year to try and set up. So perhaps people will pardon you for not implementing some of your flagship programs. So that is how the government is able to restrain the expenditure the way it did. Going into 2026, I think the expectations are going to shift. And that means that people expect that the government will now start really implementing their programs and people begin to see actions happening. And so I think that's why it's very important, it's very fascinating to see exactly how the finance ministry is going to manage this. And I think a big deal is what we are going to do with the VAT reforms and how much potential it has to expand the revenue envelope. Because that's going to determine how much the government can begin to really implement these programs while keeping the consolidation on track. So I think that part is going to be very interesting to see. Indeed, but I stay with you a while longer because I also want to pick your thoughts on this bit of the economic conversation. You know that the economy expanded, however, the expansion came from the services sector. We didn't see expansion in agric, we didn't see expansion in manufacturing, we didn't even see expansion in industry. And so we also say that the economy is still at risk because we have not been able to expand critical sectors of the economy, for which reason we are not seeing the impact we so desire.
I will agree with that statement for the first quarter. So, but for the second quarter, actually, agri grew extremely strongly. So I think if you look at the second quarter growth numbers, it's more broad-based than we saw last year, than even in the first quarter, even though on both occasions we have performed the expectation. So I actually think that agri actually has done very well, even through the first half of the year. It's done quite well. And the thing is that, especially when you look at first quarter and second quarter agri performance, first quarter and second quarter is really planting and preparation. So when first quarter does well, you know that the rest of the year agri will do well. And that's why
are you contributing to it or you are commenting?
Gov't for some key grains. You could really predict that from the first quarter indicator, because first quarter is more investment, more or less, when it comes to agri, especially for some of the grains. So because we saw strong growth there, you could tell that agri was going to do well. But I think where I agree with you is that, in some sense, the financial indicators and the monetary indicators have improved faster than the real sector indicators. And I think this is where people begin to complain that, we are not really feeling the kind of improvement in our pocket yet. Because, look, we've seen the inflation, come down to, very quickly into the target band. We've seen the financial sector doing doing very well. But it has yet to translate into the kind of improvement in terms of what will really touch a lot of lives. And I think this is where a big part is that, the flagship programs on the real sector, if you talk about the 24-hour economy, the Nkite and the other things, you realize that the government has spent the first 8 months or 9 months setting up structures, setting up secretariats. So really not much is happening there. I think that is where there will be a expectation that going to 2026, okay, let's see the action. The first year we've seen, you stabilize things a little bit, but people expect that we build on it, and so that we begin to see how the stability will translate into, what is happening in people's daily lives, people's personal economies.
Very well.
So I think overall, it's not really the case that especially if you look at the second sector GDP number, the growth was more broad-based. If you compare, the first quarter and the second quarter, the economy is divided into about 20 subsectors. Even though the first quarter growth was way stronger than expected and was the highest we've seen in about 5 years, you realize that there are about 5 or 6 subsectors that contracted. By the time you move to the second quarter, that's not the case. It's only 1 or 2 subsectors that contracted, and almost every sector expanded. Crucially, 2 sectors that have suffered significantly, cocoa and electricity. Those are subsectors that have suffered over the last, the preceding 8 or so quarters. But you begin to see those ones recording positive growth, switching from negative to positive. So I think all of those give you the indication that the growth you've seen for this year is more broad-based, at least in the second quarter. Then the issue about the role of the central bank and the currency and all, well, I think that, from my point of view, we cannot describe the currency since the first quarter as stability. I think what we can describe it as appreciation of the currency, but it's not what stability is. If you check, we started the year relatively stable around the 15. Then, for whatever reason, in March, from the end of March, April, May, we just caused a sharp appreciation. it appeared to stabilize around the 12.5 range. And then suddenly, within a week, somewhere in September, we still allowed the currency to appreciate sharply again. I think that is where we really have to question what the strategy is. Our reserve position are strong, but as was pointed out, it is not strong because we have changed the structure of the economy. It is strong because we are enjoying the positive side of the volatility of our primary commodity items. So I think, yes, I would have preferred that. Look, if we say the true value should be around 14 or 15, and therefore we keep it there. And then, we make sure that, as the president said, we keep the depreciation appreciation within a small band. That is, for me, that would have been preferable than the kind of appreciation that we've done. That's not to say some people are not going to benefit. People who are into importing, they will be happy. Their businesses will be booming. And, we've seen that because they are also not passing on much of the appreciation to consumers by way of price reductions, their profit, their bottom lines are doing well. But that is coming at the expense of other agents and other sectors of the economy. For instance, you can't say you want to use 24-hour economy to diversify your export base when you cause this kind of appreciation of the currency. It's not consistent. And I think that when a lot of the gains are coming from more or less a windfall, well, in Economist, we teach people that when you have a windfall, it's better to save a lot of it than to consume it, because that is an unusual situation. We haven't had the gold price go the rate it has gone. So I think perhaps we could have kept the currency stable rather than this excessive intervention that has caused the currency to appreciate. So I think you can understand why it's a hot topic for debate, because at the end of the day, the economy is extremely import dependent, and when the currency appreciates like that, many people will be happy. But I think we have to look at the bigger strategy. What are we trying to do? Where are we trying to position this economy?
I can really imagine.
Overall, you have to say that the government has done reasonably, has done very, very well.
Well, I see, from what I glean from what Prof is talking about and picking on what some of you have also said, it's more or less like fiscal execution has lagged behind, and so the real test will really come when the government begins embarking on some capital expenditure project as well as some of its policy initiatives. So I'll be speaking to the economics people here as well as the finance people and the tax people on how that is going to change the narrative going into 2026, and also come to the businesses to look at how the VAT reforms and even the factors of production that they are always saying that it is going up the roof, how it's going to change the game. But Francis, let me come to you. The 2025 monetary policy report by the Bank of Ghana that was released in September, the expected revenue was 122.9 billion, but government has actually raised 116.2 billion Ghana cedis, if you remember, and this led to a cash basis deficit of some 1.4% of GDP. Expenditure-wise, too, the government anticipated 152 billion Ghana cedis. As we speak, some 131.1 billion cedis has been spent. Really, is it because the government is not delivering on, the capital project that I spoke about and the policies, for which reason we are seeing some form of tightening, which a lot of people are saying that the government is not spending? So if we are to see the real test of this government's prospect in terms of the economy, they should spend, they should embark on projects, they should roll out their big policies for us to see.
Of course, in 2026, when the government starts spending, especially the big push, which is the biggest element in their expenditure, we're going to see the real test. But you realize that they just want to be disciplined. Half year, they were down by their revenue target. And one of their biggest revenue line was customs. Like I said, immediately the CD started appreciating. When people import, importers are going to pay smaller because the CD conversion is now in their favor. So that dropped their revenue basket. And in Ghana, our revenue, the direct tax to indirect tax, we do about 54 to 36%. Direct tax consists about 36%, and the indirect tax. So more of our revenue line comes from the indirect tax bit. Again, they had already scrapped the e-levy, so they were losing on that front, and the betting tax has also gone. So all of these things were eating into their revenue basket.
Are you able to tell us exactly how much the government lost in the first 8 months or 10 months, having scrapped e-levy and then the 10%?
E-levy was around, I think, 2.9 billion cedis, and they did it in April to 2nd April. So that money was completely off. Of course, the betting tax was not given. I think betting tax was given as 150 million. So that is not a significant
But
amount.
the 1% fuel levy didn't play any role in terms of the revenue?
1% came in late. I think we started in July. Remember, there were that back and forth. Immediately they started, the government said that they should hold on. That was when we were experiencing some, fighting in the Middle East. So effectively, the 1%, which was going to give us around 5.7 billion, came in late. And I think it was even after July. So that did not raise enough revenue for the first half of the year. So when they realized that revenue was not performing, they even attributed it to smuggling and then other, customs mismanagement. So they will step back and say, look, guys, we cannot continue spending when the revenue is not in. And therefore, they held back. Now that things have settled, like you said, 2026 is really going to be the test. Projects are going to be paid for. And immediately you start spending. And that is why they intend to reform the tax system.
But wouldn't the picture be more dire if the tax is revised and also the COVID-19 levy going off, if we are already struggling to raise a lot of revenue because we scrapped e-levy, we scrapped betting tax? If COVID-19 is added to it, are we not going to, squeeze the revenue,
And I think that is a risk that we are hoping that the minister will be able to maneuver. It's really a risk because COVID-19, I think I shared some data with you, between 2026 and 2027, we are throwing away around 10 billion cedis. And the question is, where are we going to get that money from? If, property rate in the past has not been performing very well because the district assemblies have not been doing enough on the property
what
side.
about even oil receipts? We know that is not even doing well.
Oil receipt is in danger now, especially because our production is dwindling. That's number one. And like Nelson said, these are commodity prices, so you don't bank your hope on them. Anything can change tomorrow. Tomorrow, if Russia decides to go and bomb somewhere, commodity price will just go off. Gold price can also change tomorrow.
So extractive royalties to become better.
Exactly. It's so risky to, rely on such commodity prices to bank your hope. The only thing we can do is to come back and reform our VAT system, which in my perspective, I think that the benefits will take a little longer time. So, like I said, 2026 is a very complex platform for the minister to see how you're going to maneuver through a time when you need to spend to really execute your projects, whilst you are, scrapping some revenue lines, and you don't even know where the money is going to come immediately. We are banking our hopes on the modified taxation and then also the sustained tax education, hoping that when we start educating the people, they will voluntarily comply, start paying the taxes.
But really, will compliance work if the rates are still high?
At least the reform will bring the VAT rate from 22% to 20%, which for my view, I think is good, even though still will remain the highest
in the sub-region.
But it is better than the experience we had in August 2028. One of the worst situations we did to our VAT policy was to mix the sales tax with the VAT system in August. And I'm happy that the minister is saying that he's going to reverse it. But we are now hoping that all of these things will bring in the needed revenue going forward. Other than that, when they start spending, all the metrics that we've spoken about will go back to their worst situation.